What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into our first news. Jean Silva has made a huge request to Dana White ahead of the biggest weekend of his career. Silva is set to headline the September 13th card, where he will face fellow featherweight contender Diego Lopez in what could be a career-defining fight. But the Octagon is not the only place where Silva is preparing for a massive moment in his life. Soon after the fight, he is planning to get married, and he has a very specific vision for how that special day should look. During a recent appearance on Fight Week Focus, Silva revealed that he wants Dana to play a major role in his wedding. According to him, Dana is the godfather who will sponsor the entire event, including bringing in the famous Brazilian singer Belo, who happens to be his fiancé's favorite artist, to perform at the ceremony. Silva explained that it is not just about holding a wedding in Las Vegas, because it is Vegas. For him, the city holds deep meaning. He pointed out that Vegas was where he first competed on the Contender series, and it was also the site of his first UFC fight. It is the place where he believes he will one day become world champion. Because of this, Silva wants to hold the wedding at the UFC Performance Institute, turning the venue into a symbolic and unforgettable location for the occasion. He went on to describe his vision in detail, saying he can picture his wife walking into the wedding wearing his UFC championship belt, making the moment even more special. The combination of his fighting journey and his personal life is something he wants to intertwine, and having Dana's support is central to that dream. This is not the first time Silva has brought up Dana's involvement in his wedding. After his impressive submission victory over Bryce Mitchell at UFC 314 back in April, Silva made a post-fight request that grabbed headlines. He asked Dana not only to be his best man but also to help pay for Belo to sing at the wedding. At the time, Dana responded in his typical fashion, saying he was probably in, which only fueled more excitement about the possibility of it actually happening. Now, with the fight against Diego Lopez just around the corner and his wedding plans moving forward, Silva has doubled down on his request. He seems determined to make this dream come true, combining his rise in the UFC with one of the biggest personal milestones of his life. For Silva, the fight and the wedding are two major moments that represent the future he envisions for himself, both as a fighter and as a husband. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We are constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That is why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update here on MMA Pulses News. Moving on to another news, Arman has once again found himself in the spotlight, but not for the reasons fans might expect. After completely botching his title shot against Islam Makhachev and quickly becoming one of the most disliked fighters in the UFC, Arman is now making headlines for agreeing to a grappling match with Mauricio Gamrot, the very same opponent he previously turned down in the Octagon. This isn't just speculation either. Arman himself admitted that the UFC offered him Gamrot, but he declined the fight, insisting that he wanted someone ranked higher. The strange part is that Gamrot already holds a victory over him, making Arman's refusal even more confusing for fans and analysts. Instead of trying to rebuild momentum and bounce back strong, Arman has been rejecting fights and making questionable career choices. Gamrot, in a recent interview with Inside Fighting, explained his side of the story. According to him, a grappling organization had reached out and offered him a match against Arman. Surprisingly, Arman said yes this time, but Gamrot turned it down. For Gamrot, the logic was simple. He explained that they first need to run it back inside the UFC, where the fight truly matters, before doing anything else like grappling matches. Gamrot described the whole situation as funny. He recalled that just a few months ago, the UFC was working hard to set up a rematch between the two inside the Octagon, but when that opportunity came, Arman said no. Fast forward, and now Arman is suddenly agreeing to a grappling contest, which to Gamrot doesn't make much sense. He emphasized that both of them deserve to face off again in the UFC to create a clear image of who is better in MMA, and only after that should they even think about grappling or other competitions. Right now, the lightweight division rankings add another layer of complexity. Gamrot is sitting at number 8, while Arman is somehow still holding on to the number 2 spot. That gap is significant, and Arman has been vocal about wanting bigger names like Dan Hooker or even Paddy Pimblett instead of facing opponents ranked below him, but the UFC might not agree with his strategy. According to reports from Red Corner MMA, the promotion is already lining up Arman versus Dan Hooker for UFC Qatar this November. That potential matchup could be a defining moment for Arman, who desperately needs to win back the fans and rebuild credibility in the division. This entire situation has left the MMA community divided. On one hand, some argue that Arman is trying to protect his ranking by avoiding a dangerous opponent who already beat him. On the other hand, others feel he's simply making poor career decisions that could damage his reputation further. Meanwhile, Gamrot's stance is clear. He doesn't want to play around with grappling matches before settling unfinished business in the UFC. For him, it's about proving himself in the cage first, then exploring other opportunities afterward. As things stand, Arman's next move will be closely watched. Whether he faces Hooker in November or continues to angle for bigger names, fans will be paying attention. But one thing is certain, until he addresses his rivalry with Gamrot inside the Octagon, questions about his choices will continue to follow him. Moving on to another news, Alex Pereira has sent a direct warning to Magomed Ankalaev ahead of their highly anticipated clash. In a recent sit-down with MMA Junkie, Pereira explained that he believes the future of Ankalaev's title hopes rests entirely on this upcoming fight. According to him, if Ankalaev fails to get the job done at UFC 320, the UFC will have little reason to offer him another rematch, and he may instead have to go through the contenders path before even thinking about a championship shot again. It was a clear message that the pressure is firmly on Ankalaev's shoulders and that this could be his last chance to stay in the immediate title picture. Pereira emphasized that the story of this rivalry is close to being over. He admitted that what happens next is out of his control and that the decision will ultimately lie with the UFC. However, he made it clear that if the promotion wants to run it back, he is ready to fight anyone they put in front of him. At the same time, he strongly hinted that a loss for Ankalaev in this fight could shut the door permanently on his chances of fighting for the belt. From Pereira's perspective, everything we've seen so far suggests that a defeat here would push Ankalaev far down the line. The conversation around whether a trilogy would ever make sense seems to be fading, with Pereira pointing out that unless Ankalaev wins, there is no real reason for another chapter. For Pereira, it is simple. This fight will either keep the rivalry alive or end it once and for all. The stakes could not be higher, and both men are entering UFC 320 knowing that everything is on the line. Beyond the fight itself, Pereira also opened up about his activity inside the cage over the last few years. Known for being one of the most active high-level fighters on the roster, he admitted that he now has some regrets about taking so many fights in such a short span. Reflecting on his career decisions, he confessed that maybe if he had planned things better, he would not have fought as frequently as he did. While it gave fans plenty of unforgettable moments, it also came at a personal cost. Looking ahead, Pereira stated that he does not intend to continue at the same relentless pace. He explained that from now on, he will be more selective with his fights and take time to let opportunities come to him instead of jumping at every chance. He mentioned that if something important comes up, he might consider stepping in, but the days of him constantly staying active and fighting several times a year are likely behind him. For Pereira, it is not just about the physical demand, but also about ensuring that every fight truly matters. He is now focused on making smarter decisions, pacing his career, and maximizing his performances when he does step into the octagon. With UFC 320 on the horizon, his warning to Ankalaev, combined with his more calculated approach to fighting, shows a veteran mindset that is fully aware of the stakes and the legacy he is building. Moving on to another news, Mauricio Ruffy has finally broken his silence after facing widespread criticism from the MMA community following his loss at UFC Paris. Heading into the fight, Ruffy was seen as a strong favorite. He had built an impressive 7-fight win streak and was fresh off a highlight reel knockout victory over King Green, which had fans and analysts buzzing about his rise in the lightweight division. Expectations were high, and many believed he would continue his momentum against Benoit Saint-Denis. But once the cage door closed, things did not go as planned. Ruffy struggled to deal with Saint-Denis' relentless wrestling, a game plan that clearly neutralized his striking. Despite moments of resistance, the pressure proved too much, and Ruffy was ultimately submitted in the second round. The result shocked many, considering how much momentum he carried into the fight. During the broadcast, UFC analyst Dean Thomas did not hold back, openly questioning Ruffy's performance. His commentary echoed the thoughts of many fans who quickly took to social media to express their disappointment. In the days that followed, the criticism intensified. Fans questioned whether Ruffy had underestimated his opponent or failed to prepare adequately for the wrestling-heavy style of Saint-Denis. Others wondered if the hype around his win streak had been overblown. While much of the MMA community piled on, Ruffy has now responded with a message that sheds some light on his experience in Paris. He thanked everyone who showed concern and support, but also acknowledged that something unusual happened during the fight. According to him, for the first time in his life, he stepped into the octagon without control over his own body. He explained that his body simply did not respond to him that night, leaving him unable to perform at his true level. Ruffy made it clear that he does not want to share the exact details of what went wrong, because he does not want it to come across as an excuse. Still, he admitted that the situation was unlike anything he had ever dealt with in his career. Despite the setback, Ruffy chose to look at the loss as a valuable lesson. He promised that he will return stronger and better prepared. He expressed gratitude for the learning experience and seemed determined to use the defeat as motivation rather than let it derail his progress. His words carried a tone of resilience, suggesting that while the night in Paris was disappointing, it will not define him. Ruffy also addressed the nature of fan reactions in MMA. He pointed out how quickly opinions change, saying that when a fighter wins, they are praised as a phenomenon, but the moment they lose, the flood of criticism begins. To him, this is simply part of the sport and part of the journey every fighter has to endure. He reminded his supporters and critics alike that ups and downs are inevitable in a career as demanding as mixed martial arts. For Ruffy, this loss is just a chapter in a much larger story. He remains committed to bouncing back, proving his worth in the lightweight division, and continuing his pursuit of greatness inside the octagon. Moving on to another news, Charles Oliveira recently sat down with Ariel Helwani for a new interview, where he opened up about everything from his upcoming fight with Rafael Fiziev to why the Max Holloway rematch didn't happen and the ongoing talks surrounding his retirement. After suffering that brutal knockout loss to Ilia, where he was completely out cold for the very first time in his career, many fans and analysts thought it might be the end of the road for the former lightweight champion. But Charles made it clear that retirement is not in his plans just yet. He is still chasing big-name fights at lightweight and is determined to prove that he belongs at the top of the division. The Holloway rematch was heavily discussed in the MMA community, especially since their first meeting ended without a decisive conclusion. There was genuine hype around running it back, but in this interview, Charles explained why that fight ultimately fell apart. According to him, Holloway broke his hand, which delayed his return, while Charles wanted to get right back into the cage as soon as possible. With Holloway sidelined, Rafael Fiziev was available, and the UFC decided to move forward with that matchup instead. Now Oliveira is locked in to face Fiziev on October 11th, a stylistic clash that is expected to deliver fireworks. Fiziev is one of the most dangerous strikers in the division, with explosive combinations and knockout power, while Charles is known for his relentless forward pressure, dangerous stand-up, and world-class jiu-jitsu. One of the biggest concerns for fans is how quickly Oliveira is returning after being knocked out by Ilia. Many believe that coming back just a few months later against someone as dangerous as Fiziev could be risky, especially considering the damage he took in that fight. But Charles is not worried. In fact, he sees this as an opportunity to show resilience, to prove that he can bounce back and still compete with the elite. During the interview, Ariel brought up Holloway's recent win over Dustin Poirier, which only fueled more interest in a potential rematch between Holloway and Oliveira. Charles admitted that he does want that fight at some point and believes it would be a great matchup. However, the timing didn't work out because of Holloway's injury, and for Charles, staying active was more important than waiting. The conversation then shifted to the idea of retirement. With fighters from his era like Dustin Poirier beginning to call it a career, Ariel asked whether that makes Charles think about his own longevity in the sport. Charles responded with confidence, saying that retirement is not something he even thinks about. He feels good, believes he is in a strong phase of his career, and is convinced there is still a lot more for him to achieve inside the octagon. He expressed that he doesn't feel any desire to walk away right now, emphasizing that he is motivated, healthy, and hungry for more challenges. For Charles, the future is clear. He wants big fights, exciting matchups, and the chance to prove that despite setbacks, he is still one of the most dangerous lightweights in the world. Moving on to another news, Dan Hooker has once again stirred the pot in the featherweight division, just weeks before UFC Noche. In a recent appearance with Sky Sport, Hooker made it clear who he believes deserves the next crack at Alex Volkanovski's belt, and he didn't hold back when it came to criticizing others in the mix. According to him, the winner of Jean Silva versus Diego Lopez should be guaranteed the title shot, while contenders like Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy don't bring anything exciting to the table. Hooker bluntly stated that nobody cares about them, calling them boring and pointing out that they simply don't attract the kind of attention or energy that someone like Silva brings to the cage. For Hooker, the star power matters. He explained that Silva is the one people are watching, the fighter with real eyeballs on him, and the one fans actually want to see compete for gold. This stance is particularly interesting because Volkanovski himself, who happens to be Hooker's teammate, has always said he doesn't care about popularity. Volk has made it clear over the years that he just wants to face the most deserving challengers. In fact, Volkanovski has been pushing to get the Murphy fight done because he genuinely believes Evloev is the rightful next contender based on merit and performances. But Hooker is looking at it differently. He argues that Volk deserves the biggest and most exciting fight possible, not just the most technically deserving one. And in his view, if Silva manages to get past Lopez at UFC Noche, then that's the fight that needs to happen. Hooker doubled down on his belief, saying that whoever has their hand raised between Silva and Lopez should be the one fighting for a title next. He emphasized that these are the most exciting fighters in the division right now, and both of them bring something extra to the table. Hooker acknowledged that Lopez also moves the needle and has done an incredible job capturing the attention of fans alongside Silva. In his eyes, this matchup is the one that generates buzz, hype, and excitement, which the UFC always values when deciding title contenders. At the same time, Hooker didn't hesitate to dismiss Murphy and Evlo once again. He said Murphy is simply too boring, and while he gave him some love as a fighter, he noted that Murphy doesn't know how to get on the microphone, sell fights, or engage fans in a way that makes people eager to watch. He even went as far as to say that some fighters just take too long to develop that kind of charisma, and if they can't say things with their chest, then they're never going to stand out. When it came to Evlo, Hooker was even harsher, saying straight up that no one cares about seeing him fight. Hooker also threw a jab at Aljamain Sterling in the middle of his rant, pointing out how sometimes even talented fighters don't get the love from the UFC because they don't excite fans. He clarified that while he personally respects Sterling, he knows the UFC as a company isn't fond of him because of the way he sells or doesn't sell fights. In the same breath, Hooker tied it all back to his main point. He said the winner of Silva versus Lopez is the clear option for a title shot, and he feels 100% confident about that. At the end of the day, Hooker's comments put more pressure on the UFC to consider popularity and fan demand over just rankings and win streaks. And while Volkanovski might not care about hype and only wants the best challengers, Hooker is pushing for the fight that makes the most noise. That's it from MMA Pulse News. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.